Howdys and salutations, everyone! Siphimir here, and I super didn't change the stream alert, did I? Whoops. Let's update the stream info real quick, and then we'll actually do this. Let's see. It's a decent title. Let's do it. I'm not sure the go live notification matters all that much anymore, does it? But we're gonna give it a go anywho. Learning how to... Yeah, Widdershins fan art. Because that's what we're actually doing today. This is gonna be a fun one. Wait, is it just art? What the heck is the category? Oh, cool. Yep, that's it. Digital art. Okay, let's get that fixed real quick, and then we'll actually jump in here. Welcome back, hopefully, or welcome for the first time. Either way works just as well for me. Happy to have you here. So, we took a little bit of a break on Wednesday with a little bit of Stardew Valley. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll pick that up again in the future. It's always nice to have a little break option on the back burner, and we actually made some crazy headway when doing that. I've never played that game so fast. And yet I wasn't trying to play it super fast, so it kind of works out. When I tried to beeline everything in that game, I got super stressed out and burned out in, like, the first fall. So yeah, there are better ways to do it than that. Anywho, today, however, we're getting back to the digital art. Getting back on the, I don't know if it's a grind, I actually just kind of want, it's kind of fun, honestly. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I am gonna be tired today. Had to do some early work meetings, and so I am, exhausted. But we're gonna keep this going, because there is a cool thing that I actually want to do. So I know we've talked about style studies a little bit. This is actually going to be a little different, but it is still going to be one where I'm got to promote something awesome. There's one of the webcomics I follow is called Widdershins, and it's another absolutely fantastic one. Let me see if I can't pop it in chat real quick. Really fun story, really great art. They've been going for a long time. It's also a very reliable one, so if you're ever worried about your webcomics going on indefinite hiatus, as they often do for various reasons, this one, so, I mean, they finished another webcomic before this, and this one's been going for years and years now. I've even got a couple of the books in hard copy that I got on their last, or maybe previous to last, a recent Kickstarter. And it's an absolute blast by, Kate Ashwin, assuming I can spell that right. There we go. So that is definitely the topic for the day, and what they're doing is for the whole month, they've set up daily prompts, sort of like you may think from the old Inktober days, back before all of that, you know, what's the right word for it? I'm gonna go with snafu. That feels like the right energy. Back before that whole snafu. And so, we happen to have a particularly fun prompt today, and I've actually kind of already got an idea in mind. So we're going to do a little bit of Widdershins fan art. Not necessarily trying to match that style, but I think it will be an interesting one to go for. It'll let us do some interesting stuff with color, too, so hopefully we can actually get it done today. Which means I'm not going to monologue for 20 minutes at the start of this one. We're actually going to try to jump right in here best we can. So, today's prompt, well, first off, let's go on the normal layer. Let's make the normal layer visible. And let's erase the single crazed line mark I have left on here for some reason. Okay. So this one is, let's see. Widdershins. It's the name of the comic. Fan art. Day 4. That's not really how you do a 4, but it's close enough. And the prompt is possession. Now, with some of the sort of mystical and magical and themes and stuff going on in the comic, once again, I'm not going to try to spoil anything about it. And I'm not going to be able to do an elevator pitch that does it justice, other than it is a fun combo of a dropout magician and an excellent street detective who end up getting in well over their head in all the mysteries of Widdershins. Although, I mean, some of the best characters aren't even in those main duo. Not that they're not that they're bad. They're great fun, but there's just a whole slew of fun characters. So definitely 100% go read it. But the main thing that I think we wanted to do on this one is, instead of necessarily going entirely for the ghostly theme, or spirit theme, it's not exactly ghosts per se. In this case, it really isn't. I'm not sure. Are there ghosts? Anywho, rather than spoiling or failing to spoil or accidentally confusing myself about it, why don't we just jump in? I'm actually going to go for a key possession that's been sought after by one individual for quite a long time in the series, which is a particular pendant. And I'm going to go off the reference image that I have here in the actual hard copy book, so it's probably not going to be super visible. Well, it won't be visible to y'all unless you somehow have a camera into my house, which would shock me. I mean, I've been only streaming for, like, not even a month. It'd be crazy if anyone had that set up already. But it'd be crazy if anyone had that set up ever, to be fair. Please don't dox. But what we're going to do is I'm going to have that reference here, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of interesting composition, because I think the real fun part of this is actually going to be some fun color ideas. I've got some fun color thoughts. So, I'm going to try to block this in fairly quickly. Again, this is supposed to be a one-day thing. I don't want to spend 6 hours on it. It's already been a long day. So, step one about this amulet, and we'll see if we can't get a good representation of it, is let's see, the gemstone itself is for the most part round with ever so slightly boxed edges, but I also want to actually try to get this in like a halfway decent perspective rather than using the automatic built-in perspective rulers, which I have found more constraining than helpful at my current knowledge level. We'll definitely dig into them at some point. It's something I need to do. But I want to make sure that it actually looks like it is lying flat on a table. So let's throw an eye level vanishing point right here. And let's just think about roughly where we want this to be. Okay, and we can sort of, I guess we ought to have, let's see, if this is eye level. I swear we'll actually do some proper perspective discussions sometime, because I love perspective. But it's a topic I'm sort of saving for a tired day, because it's something that I really enjoy. So we'll get the other one there. So, like, yeah. This will allow us to sort of capture it in perspective in this space. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more up here. I'm going to break out the pencil, because we're just kind of sketching it in right now. And we're going to kind of get a rough circle in here. Thinking about not actually trying to draw an even circle, but trying to match basically so that it bumps into each of these 4 points on the square. And I still always end up with something a little warpy from it. There's a little more to it in the mental math, and eventually, you know, it's something you can just get down rote. You can see I'm sort of scratching in lines right now. But if we take away these guidance lines, like, that's clearly not an actual circle. It is way wider than it is tall. Like, you could, it's obvious enough as like this, but I can go ahead and even grab the selector and just really show it. Like, clearly not the same length. Like, almost half as long. But when we've got all the perspective lines going on, it seems perfectly plausible that this is a circular object that's just lying flat in perspective. And that's the kind of magic that I really enjoy with digital and non-digital art, is getting to do stuff like this. Of course, we'll see where it's actually lying by the end of this, but let's get the actual charm itself ready first. Let's see, where do we want the top of it to be? I want it somewhere visible. I think maybe... So it's sort of mounted onto a little gold piece, and the accent, it has a gold accent that goes around roughly a quarter of it at the top where it connects to the clasp. So I think we'll sort of have that here. This is not as much of an exact line. It's a little, that's a little better, but it still warps it too much. I'm just sort of roughing things in, I say, as I draw a bunch of perspective lines, but you need those to rough it in well. Oh, and if I didn't mention, backseating is absolutely allowed and encouraged. If I'm doing something wrong, feel free to shout at me. But you don't have to. I'm not your school teacher. You don't have to say a word. There's no assignments here. Feel free to just chill and relax. But if you're getting frustrated by me doing something stupid, don't stay frustrated. Go ahead and shout at me. I'm here to learn as much as y'all are. Maybe more so, depending on how experienced y'all are. I mean, I don't know you, so I have no idea. Okay, so thinking about... Looking at this reference, it would seem that the gold is a little bit biased. Just to double check from the other angle. Yes, the gold is sort of biased to the sides. So if we had sort of... like this, so assuming this is the top section, these are the two side sections. Won't be anything visible of the back plate down there. We'll have like a little bit. This takes up roughly 2/3 of the area between where it connects and where it goes behind this piece. And a second one begins that way, but isn't going to last very long. May not even be visible on the other side. We'll get like just the hint of it. Because the really fun ornate piece is the top piece, which is sort of here. And once I have just this sort of blocked in, then we'll really get going on that part. Because it's got a fun shape. It's really more... See, this needs to... Well, it needs to not cut into the gemstone itself, because it would inherently have to go around it. So if I'm ever cutting further than this piece, then that's not doing it right. So I think this is right. It's got like a little connecty piece on it. And an interesting chain. Which I'm sure there's a chain brush for this, actually. That's something I had to look at for CSP. It's got great brushes for a lot of stuff like that, and it's designed so that you can easily make brushes. Let's see. We'll sort of leave that trailing for now. There we go. We'll deal with that later. We don't need that too much detail in it yet. But it is an interesting clasp. So, with some of the loose ideas sort of out of the way, let's see. I want this one to be here. Okay. So tossing out the perspective lines, does this still look like an actual thing? Yeah, for the most part. Probably doesn't need my alignment pieces here, though, so we can probably toss those. Thank you, Vector Erase, for cleaning those up fairly quick. Okay. And then back to our pencil. Well, we'll get a little bit of glancing light. I want to think about where the light's emanating from. Oh, that might be an interesting way to do it. I'm trying to think about my framing, because there's another thing that's got to be in this piece that I definitely don't want to miss out on. Because there's the character who seeks it, of course. Well, one of them. But I need to think about how to depict them. An interesting figure, this one. Let's see. Would that be the right pose for it? So you'll have to bear with me for just a second. I gotta kind of mull this over in my mind before I even start on some of that posing. Let's see. Angle, don't get distracted rereading the comic. This is not the time. As tempting as that is, because it is a very fun comic. Let's see. Okay, that might do. Maybe... I want to make sure this is... Okay, I can talk a little bit about composition here. I'm not getting much into it, because it's way more complicated than I can do anything masterful for. But at the very least, we can talk about rule of thirds a little bit. So let's do... This is perspective lines. This will be our rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds is basically that... And generally speaking, there's a lot of exceptions to this, but if you want a very basic rule of thumb, if you want an image to look dynamic and not just flat and superposed, you don't want to center the thing, because by default, when we look at a camera and we're taking a picture of something, we... oh, this is rough, but, you know, thereabouts. We try to center the focus. Like, if you're doing like a grand building and you want it to be overbearing, well, actually, if you're overbearing, you want to set the line of sight a little below it so it looks like it towers over you. But generally speaking, if you're taking a picture of a place, you're taking a picture directly of it. But if you want a scene to feel a little more natural or a little more dynamic, but you still want to be able to guide the viewer's eye, then you actually want to divide the canvas into rough thirds, which I have done a frankly dreadful job of doing. But you can see where I started. Like, this was very much centered on this quadrant here, because where you really want focal points is to be on the intersections, or at the very least along one of the lines. Because the viewer's eye, if you've got one thing that's centered in one of those 4 points, and everything else isn't along them, the viewer's eye will generally, unless you've got some really bold color stuff going on, generally go to the thing in this location, or centered on them first. And so if you've got something that you want to be a focal point, this is one of the tools you can use to really bring it there. What that means, however, is, let's see. that I actually want to lasso this, because thinking about how I want to lay this out, I want to move it up to this one. I think it will be a more interesting angle if I have it like this. Maybe even like a little bit down, but the text here is going to throw off my view a tad. And the fact that these are clearly not actual thirds. I'm almost pushing like 2/5, 2/5, 1/5 with how off this is, but like, we're not there yet. So we'll do this, and this is going to be an excuse to overcomplicate the drawing, because that is something that most artists are good at, and I, whether I'm a proper artist or not, am no exception. But this is our opportunity to draw a hand. I think this individual ought to be clutching this. Not fully clutching, mind. But, just loosely. So let's see, if we've got the angle, I think I want the face to be sort of looming on it. Maybe we do want this in the lower third so that the face will sort of loom above it. I don't want the emphasis... I mean, the emphasis should be on the fact that it's clutched, but if the emphasis is already on this piece, then it should do the gist of this. So yeah, let's pop this back down to where it was. It would help if I selected it first. Scoot this over, because the chain isn't really the center of this, so I don't want to use the exact center. Okay. So moving it back down, with our very rough thirds rule. Again, we're just sort of roughing everything in right now. I've still got this in sort of the perspective, from the perspective lines. I actually got that pretty close to where it was supposed to be. So then I think if they're holding it in their hand, if it's this hand, if it's, So, assuming the figure is facing us, so we've got this smiley face sort of staring at it, and sort of imposing over it a little bit. Which hand is going to be more engaging? Do we want to sort of imply they've got this arm holding it? Or do we want to imply that this arm is the one holding it? Both off screen. We'll do some interesting stuff with the figure next, but for now, this is what we're looking at. My default thought was to do it this way, but actually I feel like it's kind of more dynamic when it's this one. Let's see. Okay, yeah. And then we can just sort of leave this as looming, imposing background color. Because that's really the goal. I may even push him above the rule of thirds line to make him more of like an ominous background-y figure. So that, I think, is what we'll do there. We've got that off. We got this sort of loosely blocked in here. So then I'm gonna rough the hand in on a different layer. Amulet. Let's do hand, because hands are, famously complicated. So if it's that hand, and they're clutching it upwards, thumb is going to be on the far side. Okay, let's think about this whole hand. Fingers are going to be gripping here, roughly. Assuming that, I mean, you wouldn't really grip with all four. Well, I guess you could if you sort of had those two there, and then kind of one pinching down further and down like this. Okay, yeah. I think that's roughly the right angles and locations for them. The thumb would show up roughly across from the pinky finger. Yep, that's about right. Okay. I think we're getting somewhere with the hand. Obviously, this just looks like horrible gremlin claws right now. But, knowing what we're looking for now, I think we can actually do some handiwork on it. If you'll pardon the truly dreadful pun. Okay. Maybe we ought to do the hand in another color for this one. I'll turn down the amulet and all that's tone for a moment. We'll do kind of a more orangey one for the hand so we can tell the difference between these rough fingers and the big one. And I don't promise I'm going to do a good hand. I've read a lot of guides on how to do hands, and I have managed to successfully forget most of that information. So, in lieu of having that, I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. There we go. In lieu of remembering how to do any of that, I'm just going to stare at my own hand a little bit and hope that I can't get at least a decent replica of this. Okay. Because this is still going to be sort of moving towards a palm there. This one, I want to make sure it's clutching, so these should really even be, like, down a little bit like this. Ah, this is a fun song. We'll see if it survives lo-fi. Okay. Loose finger there. Oh, I think that's worse. We'll deal with making sure they all connect proper like in a moment. Okay. These two sort of connect further up and at an angle vaguely pointed at each other. But this one is still roughly going to align an angle with that one, but slightly more towards the center. We'll try not to vary it too much. Immediately, okay, it's got to come down around the amulet. It can't cut in until the second knuckle here. Amulet's going to obscure this, but generally speaking, that should go there. This one is going to sort of be at a competing angle a little bit. And that's going to end up being like that. And then the thumb, what angle is the thumb going to be at compared to this? Yeah, okay, it's still kind of pointed away from the palm. So it's really going to be more something, sort of an inversion of this one, really. It's really going to be more like that. But it's a thumb, of course, so it'll be a little bigger. I want to make sure we're getting the hand in roughly the right place before we, like, do anything. And so I do still want to check that it makes, you know, any sort of sense if the amulet weren't blocking our view. Let's see. Thumb, joint. Okay, it always has like the little pop-up and then kind of down like that. And then it kind of swerves in towards the palm a little more. So you'd have like, I don't know, line, something. That the actual palm lines are not really my main concern here. And kind of a wrist there. I think that looks believably like a hand. Thinking about nail placement, this is something I've actually botched a lot of okayly drawn hands, is with a really badly placed nail, and it suddenly makes all the perspective look wonky and out of whack. So, I want to make sure that we're thinking this through a little more. Okay, let's see. Assuming that we've got a slight overview, we're probably still going to see all of the nail. It's just going to be biased a little closer to this side, because we're going to be seeing sort of the side of this finger. Like, this finger is really a box, like anything, well, most things can be represented like a box, and the nail is mostly on the top of it. So we can clear some of this out. Leave that one, make sure that this nail, again, we've sort of got the competing angle thing going, but we also have the different perspective, so yeah. And we'll see if this is how we end up wanting to do the nails. I'm just trying to block in locations before I figure out styles. Okay. I think that that is reasonable as the hand sketch. Perspectice. Meh, close enough. Text. Teaks. Still close enough. It's fine. Okay. Let's right-click on this. Let's do a new layer folder. Wow, that's not even close to how I thought that would go. What did I do last time that it actually put all the selected things in? Oh, maybe. There's nothing in this, right? Yeah. We can make the folder talk. Okay. You've had enough to say, folder. Goodbye. Okay, let's try this again. Select all of these, right-click. Create folder and insert layer. There we go. Sketches. And we'll bring this back. I'm not too worried about this position here. I've got kind of a different thing I'm going to do with that. We'll go ahead and make the amulet back to full opacity. And then we'll probably make the whole sketches folder down a little bit. Because it's time to try something a little different. Once again, I think I'm actually going to go for a sort of mostly lineless style on this one. We'll see how that goes. I'm not going to try to stick to it as vehemently as I have on previous ones. So I'm going to just... But I do think that it's a fun way to get some cool, bold colors. So, first off, we're going to do what we've done before with lineless. We've got a raster layer here. All of my sketches were on vector layers. It allows some easier erasing. And vectors are good if you're doing line overlap and such, but for lineless, if I want to be able to do color fills and such, the raster layer is preferable, in my experience. And the difference between those, in case anyone didn't know, is raster layer, it's basically you just go in here and you say make pixels this color. Every pixel I select, make it this color. And sure, the brushes may adjust and add filters and stuff to it, like this one makes it a little fuzzy because it's supposed to be a pencil line. But generally speaking, it's just placing stuff. Like each of those little fuzz pieces is just a pixel that's on or off. It doesn't remember that this is a line. It doesn't care that this is a drawing or that this is a smiley face. It's just pixel on, pixel off, pixel on, pixel off, so on and so forth. Vector layers actually remember the motions that were used to create them, amongst other things. And so they could actually remember... Let's make this a wee bit bigger. So a vector line, this is fun, is basically... I make a line, and it remembers that this is a specific line. I can actually pick this whole thing up, and it's abstracted it into a series of basically... forget the exact words, I don't know if they're nodes or focal points, or something of that nature. And you can even warp the line using them. So I can drag this, and it's not just, like, it knows that these are all part of the same line. It's even got sort of the reaction counter curves there to balance it. As you can see, like, zoop, so it knows all of this is connected. If this were raster, there wouldn't even be a node here to grab and alter that, let alone, you know, anything else. It also means that I can use the vector eraser, and because it knows this is a whole line, if I cross it once, it cleans the whole line up because it knows they're all related. So vector layers are great fun, and they're part of the reason I use CSP instead of Krita, although Krita is a fantastic starter program, which I would highly recommend. If you don't want to burn any money and you just want to be able to use basically a professional drawing tool, Krita's got everything. It's phenomenal. So... let's see. How do we want to approach this? Let's do amulet gold. Let's see if we can't just block in some shapes. And so we're going to use the same selection process that I've used previously, which is to say we use the selection tool here, and then we're basically just going to select the exact area we need. We might clean it up a little bit with the erase select, which lets us remove, like, cut away certain selected areas, and then we'll just fill. So, I know that most of this doesn't need to be gold, but I kind of want to keep a cohesive idea of the amulet, just so I can also lay some stuff out still, because these sketches are still a little sketchy. I should have used a much bigger. Let's clean up some of those loose ends inside. Main thing is to make sure that I get these outward-facing curves. And that one, and that one. I'm not worried too much about staying exact to the line work on this, because the line work itself is very sketchy. I didn't go out of my way to correct and make it clean and nice. Okay, and then same on this one. We'll just sort of curve it down. And yeah, this is where I can use a slightly smaller erase tool. It looks like Bowser's paying us a visit with this music. Maybe he's curious about the select tool. Probably not. Okay. Although there were all those like Paper Mario Color World ones, so maybe you would be interested. Let's see. I do want to get this flare here. And I do want to make sure that okay, it'll be over itself, so that'll be interesting. We'll have to do a little bit, just maybe a hair of shading there. Okay. I don't like the parallels of those. This would probably blend in there. Yeah, I think this is reasonable. So now the next challenge is I need to find a gold that looks good. And not just that looks good, but that looks good with the red I've chosen. So I'm going to try not to get too bold of one. By the way, gold is just dark yellow, and if you go further, you get brown. They're the same color family. We talk about light green and dark greens, light blues and dark blues. Yellow and brown are just light light it and dark it. I guess dark... A lot of the browns really land more under orange, but it's the same deal. Okay, so I think that'll be a reasonable gold tone to start with. So, oop, not a vector layer. Let's get ourselves a apparently 2 rasters. Amulet gem. Let's get the actual gem in here. And this is where I want to use the same red that we were using on some of these sketch layers. So, if I go into here, and I grab this tool, and we see if we can't grab this really rich but not too bright red. And for the record, I couldn't define rich if you asked me to. Like, it's just one of those things that I've sort of guessed from experience, and I hope I'm using it right. Okay, I've gone and put these in the sketch folder. This was not my desire. There we go. So now we can still see our sketch lines over it, which is what we want. And again, I'm going to go ahead and grab a big one for the bulk of the filling here, because I want to make sure that we cover up all of the gold edge where we don't want it, but that we don't cover up any of the gold edge where we do want it. I'd really have another gold layer on top of this, and that may be what I do for sort of the top decal piece. Okay, but we can sort of fill this in a little bit just to make sure we covered our bases. Kind of squared off. That's actually pretty close to the original reference, so let's do that. And then we'll do, okay, I guess amulet gold base. How are we doing on time? Okay, good. We're making decent time. Let's see. And then let's do amulet. That's not how you spell amulet. Amulate. Gold top. Do. And we're going to do a similar thing to what we've done here. Just keeping up with these color fills. Making sure that I'm getting all of the gold up here captured. Hopefully this will be slightly better than when we had to do it for that green hair on the other reference. That one was a little rough around the edges. Oh, speaking of which, actually, hold on, I'm going to pause this in the middle. I never checked who won Art Fight. Sure, let me crack this open. Let's go to Art Fight. I don't know if they've announced it yet. There's like a whole moderation period and everything. Let's see what the word is. Okay. Okay, so here we go. We'll just pop this up. Bunch of people's art here. This is obviously not mine. But credit to everyone where it's due. I don't know, unfortunately. Latest news post. Okay. Official end was August 1st. Cool. Some excited comments. Announced August 15th, end of day. Yeesh. Okay. Well, we'll have to wait a little bit to see who won. They were pretty darn close at the end there. Like, when I started, Wither was in the lead for quite a while, and then Bloom was ahead for a little bit there, but they were neck and neck. So I don't know. I'm rooting for Bloom, obviously, but most important thing is that everyone had fun and got to do some fun stuff. So yeah, I will keep updated on that. Want to keep an eye on how that turned out after all, even though I contributed a grand less than 10 points when I think the teams were in the 10 millions of points. So that's so many orders of magnitude off. That's what I get for only doing friendly fires and starting, like, attacks the last week of the contest. But no matter. Why am I using the small brush? I want to use the small brush to get the edge details right. Now that I'm actually kind of caring about that. We can clean that one up, though. But, what happened to my gold sketch? Oh, is it because the gem is red, and so it's... Oh, no. Did I do the red on the gold base layer? Ah, rats. Okay, we'll fix that. Thankfully we didn't mess up our sketch itself, though, so I can hide this. and still roughly follow where this... Oh, I didn't really define it all that well anyway in the sketchiness. Okay, then I'm going to crack out my reference just a little bit longer. Probably a fair bit longer. Got all sorts of details and stuff I want to catch from it. Okay, so the main curve at the top. So really and truly, I'm going to toss this selection entirely then, because the real way this is working is, let's see. So if this is sort of our center line and curve, it goes to the connection point. Okay, let's... Nope, I hate that button. I wish that button wasn't there. The sort of center of here, and then because it curves down, leads to that. That's fine. Curvature really ought to follow the actual gemstone under there more. Okay. So if that's the center, then it's got this initial curve that I did show here. But this ends with like a little flare up that actually goes pretty high up. And it does the same on the other side. Of course, we'll want to make sure this one's a little bit smaller for perspective since we got this at kind of a strong angle, but that's doable. And then what it actually does is not just a smooth line, but basically this continues out. So we're sort of continuing this initial curve, like woo, like this. And it does sort of a few like feathery fins on it. It's got like a few outcroppings like that. Let's see. I guess really I ought to bring that a little further over if I'm really going to do it. So really more of like, we'll make this a little bold, and then the small outcroppings. Curve that in a little bit. And then what we've got here is basically sort of a swirl from the inside. You can see that I've got the big one there. We'll keep kind of the rough one here. Or curves up. This one over here does the same deal, but smaller. We'll refine all of this once we get the initial colors blocked in, of course. And there's kind of a curve here, but it does really have sort of like a central bump and then two side bumps to it. I want to make sure we capture that. Okay. Got that curling in on itself, and basically same deal on the other side. We've got the small jags, and then the big zigzag that sort of links into this curve. And I'll probably taper that zigzag down a little bit. We'll see. Okay. And now I can use a slightly bigger pen. And then we're going to use the erase and delete tools to clean a lot of this up once the time comes. Which it will in just a few moments. And I am on the Amulet Gold top layer. Good. Okay. What I'm not on is the Amulet Gold color, however. Nope, this one. Oh, I need to make sure that I'm on this layer when I'm color picking, so the color picker is pointing at the right layer. You can adjust that in settings, whether it just picks the top visible or just whatever on the actual layer you're using. Right now, I've had more luck with keeping it on the layer I'm using, but that's something we'll toy with in the future. Okay, so this is looking decent, actually. I'll do, of course, I'll actually deselect this a little bit, and then we'll grab the selection tool and do some cleanup with a smaller area select. Maybe get down to an 8 at least. Because, of course, see if I really want this to be sharp. So if I want it to be kind of a softer curve, I can trim out the inside, and that will make the average curve, like, less sharp. You can sort of see it's doing that. But what I actually want to do is a harsher curve, so I'm going to trim off the outside. And so now the surviving bit is like the C line. But either way, I'm sharpening it using this trick again, because it's a grand old trick. And we can do a little bit of inner sharpening on this one too. Really bring that to a point. This shouldn't actually have a bump on it, so I'll do like just a little brief cleanup on it. Lost that. Oh, I guess a lot of that bumps on the layer below, ain't it? Okay, that's interesting. And then, let's see. Oh, this should really be sort of, Perhaps this is really ought to rather be something like this. And then this part up here shouldn't be there as such. It feels less balanced than it did before, though. Which is wild, because it... Let's see. Is that about the right place? Because maybe if I just need to point this up a little more. This is just supposed to be some fairly quick fan art, so I don't want to go crazy on it. I could also improvise and just make another hair bump over there, because I actually kind of like what that's adding to the detail. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Doesn't have to be a one-to-one reproduction, after all. Okay, so for both of these, I'm going to sharpen off the insides a little bit. And kind of clean off the outside here, just a hair. And sort of do similar deals for these lower ones. I don't necessarily want to make them crazy sharp. Just because I worry they'll be too distracting if they're overly sharp. It'll be noticeable how sharp they are compared to other things in the image, which isn't really what we want. And I'll leave this a little bit. I'm taking some artistic liberties with how I'm depicting the pendant, but it's pretty close. That one there, and anything beyond that wouldn't be super visible. I may soften that one just a hair. Okay, then these bumps are actually looking fairly decent. Maybe I sharpen the middle one a tiny bit. Probably not, because I suspect that's not going to look... Actually, that kind of works. And this will sort of expand to fill that area. It'll help with the perspective. Anyway, okay. Good, 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 good. That's getting the right ornate feel to it. Okay. Then I want this to sort of smooth into this. But this is obviously going to need some work, and on the flip side too. Don't think there's anyone who's surprised at that. Let's see. Oops, got slightly too fine of a brush there. Left a bunch of lingering outline doodles. Okay. Oh, this one. This is a fun cover. That's fun. Bouncy. What is this, Coconut Mall? I've been enjoying this playlist. I've been surprised that it's gotten fewer copyright strikes than the other ones I tried. But also it's just like good music in its own right. It's not just like badly corrupted existing music. It's actually like decent remixes for some of them. Not all of them. But it's been fun. Okay, I'm inclined to fill this out a little bit more. And then just get a real fine point and kind of go in here a little bit. Don't want to make it too clear that it's just a hand-drawn line, of course. Which unfortunately I'm doing more and more so. So, okay. Real quick, because I don't want to waste too much time on this piece. Because it's silly and not necessarily an important detail. Unfortunately, it is somewhat important because it's in an eye-catching location. Nope. And I deselect that before I did that. Okay. Let's do that. Let's sort of... I want it to actually look like it's tapering, darn it. But I guess it doesn't need to. Or maybe I just need to sort of refill in some area there. Yeah, that's believable. This is a believable curve. Okay, this one. New plan. Let's rebuild this a little bit. Refill in some of its nonsense. And use the other one as reference. I'm not going to taper this in particularly fast. I don't think that that's a good way to do it. In this case, and I'm actually going to use the erase select to sharpen this off a little. And we can just do like a slight little bit there. Oh, that was too much. Ah, we really do have to get to a fine point for this little section here, don't we? Do those look like they even sort of match? No. Okay. This needs to come in further. Then needs to sort of believably scoop out like this. Ah, rats. Selection pen. Not unselection pen. Those at least are plausibly related. I don't want to just mirror it because then we'd lose any sort of perspective distance. And I think that's more important than those little details necessarily looking perfect. May sharpen this a tad. Yeah, there we go. That looks decent. Not perfect, but decent. Okay, now let's solve the fact that this amulet gem piece here is on the wrong layer by being lazy and just manually copying it instead of trying to figure out. I really got to try to learn the new tools a little better, but I'm trying to move quickly. We're already at almost the hour mark. Holy cow. And I don't have to worry about the top section because it's going to get covered, so I'm really only worried about this lower section. Got a little ahead of myself with that one a little bit. See if we can't very cautiously expand this up over. That's fine. Same deal here. That's fine. And then use the erase selection on a decent size to clean up some of this mess. Ease it in. Smooth line out. We can use our selection pen. Smooth this off a tiny bit. There we go. So now on the amulet gem layer, this needs to be the actual red color. And then on the golden base layer, all of this red here needs to be the gold color. We're just going to sort of do an inversion. Yeah, well, Phil does. Surprisingly well, given the circumstances. Okay, and now if I take off the amulet sketch, and we'll take off the hand sketch to get a look at it. That looks plausibly like a nice little amulet. And it's even got a little bit of depth to it, even though, just from the perspective we did, even though we haven't really done anything that make it directly, like, reflectively look deeper. Which we'll try to do a little bit of toward the end. I don't want to spend a lot of time on a reflection and then realize it's, like, buried under someone's finger. So we've got our amulet there. We'll worry about the actual chain later if we feel like it. You know, there is one tiny piece of that I may try to keep, which is just this neat little dongle where it connects. Come on, just fill in the area. There we go. And then amulet gold top. Yeah, just fill that. Okay, now if we lose the sketch, that still looks decent. Now it looks better. There we go. Save what we're working on. Okay, amulet itself, check. Not super detailed, but it's there. Now, as far as the spirit in question goes, this is where this gets interesting. Because they actually tend to have a color not terribly unlike this amulet, slightly lighter pink to them, perhaps. So that may be what we end up going with there. Just for a sort of silhouette. Because they're an interesting figure, and I don't believe it's much in the way of spoilers that they're interested in the amulet. It doesn't tell you anything else about their nature. So let's see. I think that I want to do just a quick little sketch of them, actually, so we'll actually get some good use out of this sketch layer yet. figure. For anyone tuning in just now, by the way, I realize we're almost at the hour mark, so maybe we'll have to take a break in a second. But we're doing some fan art for Widdershins. It's a fun comic by Kate Ashwin, and they're hosting sort of a month-long drawing contest of sorts. Just for fan art and such. It's not even just drawing. If you're interested in doing like fan fiction or writing, or even, I'm sure they'd love a song if anyone did that. And it's less of a contest and more of a just fun gathering and excuse to do art, which I'm down for, obviously. So they're doing a prompt every day, sort of like back when Inktober wasn't the snafu that it is now. Sticking by that word, I think it fits. The legal, I don't know why I want to call it like a kerfuddle or kerfuffle. Muddled, I don't know. Right mess. So instead of doing that one, we've got some other fun prompt locations. And since this is such a fun comic, it's definitely one worth looking into for it. So, for the figure itself, which I realize that I'm not on a vector layer. Fine. We'll use this for something else. In here, though, we're adding a vector layer. Calling it figure. And I'm just going to try to rough them in a little bit. I'll use the amulet gem red, and then I'm going to just lighten it up a few hairs. Methinks. I think that'll be good for it. We've got the hand, which I don't really want the arm itself to be on screen, so I may even just not illustrate the arm. We'll just have the fingers, and that'll sort of fade off. Because I really want the emphasis. Once again, we talked a little bit about our rule of thirds at the start. So I want to make sure that we've got sort of focal point on the face, but I also want to bring it a little over it so that it's kind of looming. This is why I wanted to do it on a vector layer. Yeah, because then I can just toss that if it's in the wrong place, except where it interacts with it. Whatever. Except where it interacts with those other lines, because the vector erase in the current setting that I find useful only goes up to where it intersects with another line. Which is really, really handy for cleaning up lines that overshoot. Like, if you're just trying to do a triangle, like, you don't really have to try. You can just sort of clean up, boom. And I can toss it like that. But there are other settings. There are some where it would just delete this whole line regardless of what it overlaps with, and so on. It's a fun one, though. Okay, so trying to mimic the style a little bit. Let's see. I love the faces because they're so varied in this comic. The face designs. They're really quite a blast. I'll try to... I'm going off the reference for the record. I'm not just freestyling this. I happen to own a couple of the Widdershins books because I'm a big fan. Again, can't recommend enough that you go check this comic out. It is a blast. Let's see if we can't get rough silhouetting in of the face. I want it to go out of screen. I don't want... I'm like, the point is for it to be overbearing, so it's a little above that center focal point. It's a little bit like this, and it's even escaping the bounds of our canvas, so to speak. This is sharp down here, but it needs to go up, perhaps slightly. Slightly more rapidly, but not quite that rapidly, methinks. More like this. Yeah, it looks like one of those half-moon paintings right now. Ay. This is not how the faces look in the comic, for the record. Let's see. There we go. We'll get that hair in there instead, and I think that will resolve the fact that we aren't really depicting the ear. Because I'm not going to do much detail on the face. I'm just going to do some shading stuff, basically. That's sort of what I'm thinking. So now that we've got that, we can actually go on this figure layer and do... We'll have a couple selects for this, really and truly. But first, I need like a big old... Nope. Okay, that may be ever so slightly too big. Although it does select... Nah, even that's like kind of unwieldy. Let's maybe cut it down a few notches. But we can get the bulk of that done in there, and then just zip on down to something a little more reasonable, and we'll keep on bringing it down. And since we're just doing like really fluid sketch lines, I just don't want to... I don't have to follow the lines too much, but I don't want to lose out on the the flow of them a little bit. Because that's the one risk with this fill tool, is it can sort of mellow out curves if you're not careful and you're using it while it's in too big of a setting. I've got to just be careful that I don't do that. I appear to have gotten a phone notification of some nature. Phone, what do you have to inform me? Ah, a lovely reminder that I need to do some digital art today. Excellently timed. Thank you, phone. Very helpful. That reminder was helpful back in the day, but now that I've got a proper Twitch schedule, it is not as necessary. I probably ought to clean that up. So we'll sort of keep this one. I don't want to even get these too sharp, because I don't want too much detail in this. I want it to be more of a looming presence than a, like, obvious figure in the drawing. And, I'm beginning to see I'm beginning to understand an artistic choice that they made at one point. But I'm going to stick to my guns and include sharp chin anyway. Let's go sharp chin. It's actually facial hair, but, you know, hard to tell that in a silhouette. Maybe we'll round it off a little bit. Fill in some of these gaps, like so. Grab the erase selection. Clean. Let's make it a little smaller. Clear some of these out. There we go. 6. Well, whoop, that's far too small for our purposes. We'll do this. Sort of keep the points rounded a little bit. Again, I'm using the eraser pen. Still going to 12, though. And I was so happy about that line, too. I was like, this line's in exactly the way I want it to be. Just the right place. It was not. It was not meant to be. Okay, so we'll just fill this with this sort of, like, faintish... I mean, it's not... Faint is not the word for this. I may even lighten it a tad. He reappears. No. Not quite that much of a tad. We'll redarken. Somewhere between these two, if I could. That'll do. That'll do just fine. Do need to make it visible to see this little section here, though, because I am actually going to do a little bit of detailing, not crazy amounts. We're only doing one accent layer for the figure, and that's it. If I try to do more, stop me. But we'll do like a little bit of just loosely following the hair here. Loosely following the face on this end. We'll sort of make it look like the hair's got a little glow to it. Maybe we even just fill in this whole lower section there. I kind of wish there was a fill into the fill tool. Like I could just fill the selected area a little bit. But that's fine. That's kind of a weird use case. I'm sure someone's probably got a custom tool that can do it, though. CSP always seems to have a little bit of everything. So many people create... It's sort of like... I hate to say it's like the Gary's mod of drawing tools, but it has so much user-created content and a really good, like, method for distributing and sharing it. And that's, like, from pens and tools and brushes to tutorials and guides, everything. CSP is very much, like, it lives on its community, which is fantastic. It's really great. And there's a lot of really good artists who use it and contribute to that, so it's, you know, not that you don't want the contributions of everyone, but it's cool that there are people who really, like, sort of know what they're doing who are also committing to it. Let's see. I want to try to capture face shading a little bit, but not, like, too crazy much, so perhaps I should have shaded the face instead of the hair. Or maybe... Ooh, idea. Might be a bad one. But I'm doing it anyway. We're gonna make one big shady patch and see if we can't get some cool, like, just implied face shaping in here. We're gonna see if we can do that. And if this ends up looking terrible, somebody tell me. Which it may, and that is subjective. Again, backseating is more than welcome. I may or may not listen, but I will try. I'm definitely open to ideas and comments should anyone wish to provide them. Really ought to just make this a shade layer and lock it onto the lower one, shouldn't I? Oh well. A little too late to do that at this point. I can sharpen this a tad. Let's try filling that and see what we get. Assuming that we don't have, you know, the sketch layer on it. Okay. I like where that's going. I think we can do more with it. Let's throw the sketch layer back on here. Let's maybe we can apply a little bit more hair. I don't want the lighting to go too crazy on me. I'm not sure if this is contributing all that much to the shape of the head, frankly. Maybe we, rats. Maybe we do this and just toss some of that. We'll really trim this part down. And I don't want it to be too sharp or it'll draw the eye. And then as far as the mouth goes, let's see if we can't get like a little bit of implied mouth, because I want to imply a smile. But I don't want to just draw a big old smiley face, like this is probably going to end up looking if I'm too lazy to sketch it out properly. Although actually that kind of works, that kind of gets the inner grin. Let's see if it's worth including this little accent or if it's too much of a distraction, because being a little patch of darkness surrounded by all the light around it, it might draw the eye more than we want it to. I think it's probably gonna. Yeah, honestly, this is kind of working. It almost gives it a Harlequin look. But this, I think I really ought to... The place for the shadow... Oh, that's what it is. Got it. Okay. The hair shadow is the less important detail here. If I get anything, it ought to be like the eye indention. Of course, this is going to make it end up looking like some sort of jester mask, which may not be quite what I'm going for. But, of course, if I'm too lazy to draw the eyes properly, and I just instead am doing a blob in like this, then that's what I'm going to get. So let's clean these up a tad, shall we? Match the art style of the comic a tiny bit. Not going to pretend I can match it perfectly. If you really want to see the good art, absolutely go check out the actual comic itself. It is phenomenal, and it's been going for a long time. I don't want these to look a little more snaky and suspicious, so I may trim it down just a little bit. Yeah. Round off this edge. Just a hair. I think the sharpness was giving it some much-needed edge, for lack of a better word. Let's zoom in a little bit and tighten it up, but nothing crazy. Going some ominous music for him. That's fitting for this individual, I would say. Not exactly the most trustworthy fella, as you can probably guess immediately in the story. Okay, and then the real thing that makes this work, in addition to the hand, which I will shade in a minute here, I may abstract it a little more to sort of match what we've done with the face, though. Which is a shame, because it's actually like a... Well, it'll retain its good-looking handness in the abstract. I wouldn't be able to abstract it well if it wasn't a good-looking hand, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, actually. I kind of like the sharpness that brings to it, actually. Almost... I want to sharpen this a little bit, even. Okay. And I really ought to sharpen whatever this mess is. Where's you spiky chin? Spiky chin beardman. Nemesis. Okay. If I'd been smart, again, this would have just been a shade layer, but as it is, I think that it works fairly well. I don't know if I want to try to do, like, the counter accent here. Might be... It's kind of an interesting effect. Perhaps just a hair of it. Oops, no, this. Nope. This one. Does make him look a wee bit like he's got a mustache. Ah, it fits. It's fine. Perhaps... Nah. Nah. It's suitable, I would say. Now, the thing that I really want to do on this one, before we do the hand that I think is going to make it pop, is I've got sort of this neutrally reddish pink, I've got the really bold of the amulet, but this gold itself isn't too bold. I think this really would... It looks good on the current background, but to fit the tone, I think we need kind of a soft gray. Perhaps this is too soft of a gray. And perhaps this is too translucent. Oh dear. Well, I've gone and made a right fool of myself with how I've handled that, then. Let's make this one into the lighter pink. Sort of re-get what we had going with it. Not quite that light. Mind. It's sufficiently close. This gray is a little too mud brown, though, I think. I'm not sure we want a cool gray, but it would pop against these better. It does look cold and cruel, but... I mean, a solid black is always an option in cases like this. But I think that may be too much punch. I want this to be muted and subtle. Still clearly dangerous. There we go. That's getting closer to what I want. Text will obviously not be in this format, if it's there on the actual piece at all, as opposed to in the title. So, methinks if I'm smart, I ought to take a moment to stand and stretch and drink some water, and then perhaps we'll come back to this and pick up by drawing what we're going to see of the hand. And, perhaps we'll add the chain, actually. That will be an interesting linking piece, because I don't plan on adding the wrist, or in fact terribly much detail of the actual hand beyond the fingers. So, I think the chain would actually be an interesting way to sort of handle that space. Make sure everything still looks related. What on earth is this song? Spotify, what have you presented me? Spotify? Insert coin from Yoshi's Crafted World. Well, you know, I gotta say, I really do need to take that break. So maybe I'll leave y'all with this fun little song. Oh no, you don't get away from me that easily. This will be our break song. I'll be back in 5. See y'all in a moment. Howdys and salutations! How about we put a stop to this musical madness? I think that this has been enough torture. No, Spotify, where'd you go? Come back, come back. No, let me free! Okay, thank heavens. Welcome back! We'll jump right in. Just as a notice for anyone who may not have caught the start, today we are doing something very interesting. If you were ever familiar with stuff like Inktober, where it was basically daily prompts for a month, and they're just vague prompts, usually single word prompts that's maybe a concept, usually not something as dreadful as perhaps ephemeralism or ephemerality, because that would be, actually that'd be an interesting art prompt. Be a terrible prompt in Taboo though. But yes, typically there's something that's, you know, open enough that you can go a lot of different ways with it. However, Inktober's got all of its legal snafu and that mess. So, what I'm doing instead is one of the webcomics I follow called Widdershins by the excellent artist Kate Ashwin, is doing basically a month-long fan art contest, but it's not a contest, it's just an opportunity to do fan art, which is of course a win for them because it's more visibility, but it's also a win for us because we get these great prompts, and it's a fun excuse to, like, you know, sometimes there's days where you just don't have art ideas, and it's nice to not have to generate them all yourself. Like, I can do fan art, we've already got the character designs in place, and it gives me a chance to mess with some other stuff, like trying out different compositions and other interesting things. Which we may tweak the composition on this one a little bit depending on how the hand goes. We'll see. But this is fan art for that contest. Today, day 4's prompt was Possession, which I went less in a ghost sense and more in an important specific possession that this character has been pursuing, which would happen to be this amulet. So, sticking to the lineless style because it is quick and easy to make it look clean. Lines are great, but I am not good at making them look clean in a reasonable amount of time, and since this is, you know, a daily prompt type deal, I would rather get it just finished today in one go. So we're trying to actually keep up a good pace on this. But I highly, highly recommend for anyone who's interested in this, whether you want to see the prompts, have some own inspiration, or just want to see the comic, because it is really a wonderful comic. I'll post it in chat again. It is widdershinscomic.com by Kate Ashwin. Absolutely phenomenal. I've got a couple of the books that I got through Kickstarter, including one that is the thing I'm actually using for reference for these characters, because keeping the reference up on screen until I figure out how to do my OBS layers a little better is not great. Speaking of OBS layers, have I been missing my overlay this whole time? That's fine, whatever. I still don't know why it's exactly 1 pixel to the left. Why are you like this? Anywho, we're on a bit of a time crunch today because we want to actually get this done in one day, so we're going to get right into the hand, and then we may do a little more tweaking. Whoops, that's the wrong way. So, we've got the figure. Yeah, right, new raster layer, that's what we want. And we'll just call this fingers, because that's all we're really going to mess with on this. This one will be interesting, because I need to make sure I get the rough shape of these pretty well. Because hands have a lot of detail that's really important to understanding the pose they're in. Faces do too, as opposed to other things like, you know, a leg you can imply the pose with a lot less detail than it takes to clearly show what's going on with a finger. Like, you know, if you want to do it well, there's infinite detail to still bury yourself in, don't get me wrong. Oh, interesting. Perhaps I should have had multiple layers for this, like the overlapping finger parts and the underlapping finger parts. Okay. You know, let's start like this. I'm not getting the full benefit of the layers if I do it this way, but it's, you know, again, we're doing this kind of quick and messy. We're just trying to get this done on a reasonable deadline. And the little bit of time, given that there's not too much going on here, I don't think it'd be worth the effort to try to set up the separate layers, at least not for this finger, maybe for another one. And I want to see, does that look recognizable without the sketch? Is that clearly a finger? Not without the context of the others. And it's got these little gaps next to it. Okay. I think I want these to be sort of the darker tone, actually. Let's go for figure accent. We'll do that. And, we're gonna do the fill on this. Ah, wrong layer. I'm not really sure that's better. Okay, let's actually stick with the lighter tone. We can do a little more shading on these too. That's fine. Nope. Get the correct layer. Do that. Go back to the correct layer. Do that. Okay. Fingers below. And then I'm going to have to fix this one for it. But yeah, let's just go ahead and do this. It's smarter to do it this way. And maybe we'll actually learn something. That's part of the goal, is not just to blast out art, even when we're trying to blast out art, but also to get better at it. And to learn tips and tricks and ideas so that it's faster and faster each time. Okay. I've got kind of square boxy fingers on this that I'm actually going to kind of lean into a little bit. I like how that's looking. So I think that's fine. That said, that means I don't want warbly edges on them. Okay. So we'll do that one, and we'll get the underside in a minute. Oof, that got a little more warble than I wanted. So a trick with drawing lines, weirdly, is that a lot of times the faster you draw them, the straighter they are. If you slow down and overthink it, there's a lot more time for your wrists to try to do like finite corrections and stuff, and you end up making it way worse. It's still not intuitive for me. I hate having to do stuff that way, but it does work in practice. The other trick I learned, and I don't remember where I learned this, so I wish I could credit the source on it, but that when you're drawing a line, one way to help it be a little more straight and actually get to the right place is don't look at it as you go. Stare into the place you want its destination to be, and you can draw like a pretty good straight line. Like I was aiming for this. That's a lot better than if I was trying to just start here and sort of like aim at it and work my way to it. Like I missed it by more, even though I was taking my time, versus this, just straight at it, straight at it, straight at it, every time. It's wild. It's a weird trick, but it's real handy, I gotta say. I wish I knew where I heard that the first time. I've seen it a few places. I think it's probably conventional drawing wisdom, to be honest, that I just hadn't picked up until this point. Okay, so the way this is going to work is the amulet's probably going to like push into it a little bit, which is going to be weird. I don't entirely know if I'm going to be able to depict the thumb in a meaningful way, but that's fine. Okay, so we've got the upper fingers. Maybe we do add just the tiniest bit of curve to this one, since we've done it with the others. And it'll help solve some of the warbleness, although not as much as I might have liked. That's fine. Okay. Let's get the fingers below. Okay, actually, first off, let's do a better fingers above for this one, because we're about to lose it when we hide it in a below layer. Okay. Oh, that's the sketch work on it. It's not a gap. That's fine. Okay, then fingers below is going to go below the amulet. So that's all going to be hidden. And on fingers below, I can just fill this mess in, but because it's under the amulet, that don't matter. So then this one, I'm just going to try to sort of fill in here. I'll try to make them cleanish shapes, but I really don't have to, per se. Let's see. And then the thumb, I'm going to try to sort of carry over a little bit. That looks plausible enough to me. The only thing that worries me is that this kind of expects palm here, and I'm going to have to figure out a clever way to deal with that. Because I don't want to draw the wrist and everything, because it's not really aimed the right way. The composition on this piece has some flaws. Shocker for something that I'm throwing together in 2 hours. Like, concept to full finished execution. That was probably a little slow. I could have gotten a better line than that, but it's fine. There we go. And now, just to check, does this work without the line work? Kind of. Actually, kind of like the gold peeking out there. That gives a lot. This little bit here adds a lot more character to that piece. Okay. So, fine. Fingers above, shadow, whatever. I didn't want to get too deep into this. But we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're just going to do some real quick stuff, though. Flip to layer below, multiply, and then get just like a real faint color on here because we don't want anything crazy. Because I want the detail to be at the amulet, it actually makes some amount of sense to have it with the fingers too, because they're in that same area. Oh, not figure, hand. There we go. So let's see if we can't just sort of do some rough implication of some shadow on these. Maybe a slightly bigger piece than this. We'll have to get it on the below parts too, because the fingers above only covers so far. They don't know how far that one's going to go. Yep, okay, good. That's actually pretty handy. And then the thumb, get like a little bit of undershadow on it. Man, I don't stinking know where the light source in this piece is. My inclination is kind of his glowing face, but it wouldn't glow, it's just a face. I'm gonna do a hint of fingernail and see how that works. Oop, not that one. Sure. Without the sketch, that's... no. No. We'll come back to those. I'm going to do the fingers below shading first, and then we'll come back and fix those, because I need to sort of continue some of these down a little bit. Whoops. I'm going to actually do it on its own layer, thank you. Same things we did before, clip it to the layer below it, and then use multiply setting. We've gone over this a little bit before, so I don't want to dig into it too much, but basically what multiply does is instead of being its own layer, it's basically working as a filter over the layer it's clipped to. So this becomes like if we put saran wrap over the layer below it. And so I'm just going to put like a little bit of saran wrap over some of these, and it's going to make them a little darker. Assuming that the layer below it was like a light source or something. Like it still shows, the color shows through, but it's just a little obscured. Fingers below, shade. Okay. Let's see, we'll just sort of do that. Oh, that's still fingers above, isn't it? Okay, well, whatever. Fingers below, shade. Gonna have to... It's gonna take some doing to connect these together believably. Example, I'm really not sure there should even be shade on the lower section there. It really ought to be sort of like more down here. Assuming I'm on the right layer and not using screen tones. But really, that's on the above? Just drew this, I should know that. Oh well. Fine, we'll go to 6, and we'll get just like a little bit here. And really, I kind of want all of that to be in shadow. Again, we're just kind of winging this. We're not putting great grand strides into making it good. And I'm gonna go ahead and shade the whole heckin' palm, pretty much. We can sort of imply a wrist by shading it to a point. But, like, really, I don't even want it to be too much of a point. Let's taper this one a little better. Okay, I guess in this case taper it should probably mean less sharp. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just toss that one entirely. Works for me. Ah, nope, that doesn't work for me. Okay, and the fingers below, once again, just a little bit of accent shade. Here. Nothing crazy, though. Fill it in right quick like that. Obvious implications of, I don't know, hand. It implies that there is a hand there because there is a hand there. Okay. Some of that's not quite working right. I feel like this maybe should veer out less, perhaps. Yeah, it's not a perfect hand, but it'll do. And then this, I think, is actually making this look weirder. Delete that on both layers just to be thorough. Okay. Really, this should probably come out like a little further. I'm getting sort of nitpicky on stuff that I don't have time to get nitpicky on. That's not the color I selected. Why are you filling with whatever this color is? Unless there's shade over it. Nope. Less fingers above. Nope. Okay. Oh, because I'm drawing in stinking transparency. Oh, got it. Okay. Grab the fingers above. Grab the actual color there and fill. There we go. But I need this to be not on fingers above. Let me just keep undoing until we... Okay. Fine. And then we need this to be on fingers below. Okay. That's enough of that. If I want to do any more detail, I ought to do it on the actual, like, amulet itself and not these hands. Which I think is what we ought to do next, actually. Oh, wait, nope, we were going to solve the fingernail problem. That's right. I can't leave them like that. They look terrible. Right, this needs to be on the shade, and it needs to be the fingers above shade. And it needs to not be this color. It needs to be that color. Ah, nope, not that. Yeah, like I mentioned at the start, I am real stinking tired today, so I do apologize if I make more misclicks than usual. I had to wake up real early for work at an early morning meeting. Not fun. I mean, not bad. Honestly, it went really well. I got to meet some cool people. I can't complain that much, but I am sleepy. There we go. Hopefully, if this works the way I think it will, having the added shadows here will help sort of integrate the fingernail shadows in and they won't look so jarring. I'll have some other stuff around them that makes them make more sense. We'll see, though. They might just look like horrible blobs still. I mean, they kind of do, but in a way that looks a little more intentional, so I'm kind of inclined to just say that's good enough and drop it. Yeah. Zoom out. Looks fine. This looks a little weird. I feel like this should maybe come out less here. I don't know if that's got to be on above. And below, apparently. Not the shade layer, the actual, yeah. Alright, and then I think, like, this shouldn't come out quite so far. Should just use a bigger grabber for that, but whatever. Don't want it to cut into that one. Nope. A lot of tools in this program, and I still have not mastered quite... There are many of them I have not. Okay, so we'll leave that like that. Maybe we'll make the shade a little more subtle. I don't know. The main thing I want to do now is make sure we get the Done well. Ah! Nope, I just turned the whole layer into a multiply. Instead, let's add a new amulet gem shade. Game shade. Get your game shaders here now. Okay. Let's see if we can't. Kind of a nice little highlight on it. Using the selection tool and not the erase selection, maybe. Let's actually set this as clipped and multiply. Of course, if these are what I really... I also need to make sure, if we want to add depth to this, we need to make sure the shadows on it sort of make sense. Especially in line with the ones we've added to the fingers already, which already kind of don't make sense. But I can at least add a little implied shadow under some of these. More on that side there than on this side. Just from angle. Let's fill all of that in and see if that gives it. Yeah, that's given a little more depth. What's really making me think, though, is that I ought to just kind of really go all in on this part, actually. It'll make this look a lot more 3D, hopefully, unless I just select the wrong area and leave random nonsense in it. In which case, even these bubbles don't necessarily make sense. They're a fun little accent, but they don't work in this context, really. Okay, yeah, so we've got kind of... Okay, we've got good depth on the gemstone itself. I do still think that maybe... Let me look at the reference to see how they... Maybe like a little highlight on it would do it some good. What did we end up doing for that last time? We had another raster layer. Oops, no. Oh, right, it's because it's normal, but as soon as I set it to, like, screen, I think, or color dodge, this should still be clipping to the right layer now. Okay, but that's just got it clipped to that layer. Okay, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. We'll see. You know, we'll find out if it's fine in just a second here. Yeah, it's still fine. That's much, much too bright, though. We'll grab this on the actual layer it's on, and we will just whiten and pinken it a little bit. And then I'm actually going to just make my selection tool into a big circle and see if we can't just do this with one big sweep. Nope, that's the wrong angle. I need it to sort of follow the curvature of it a little bit, so maybe we put it on this side. Really sort of draw the eye a little bit more. There we go. And we can, let's make this screen layer amulet gem highlight. Let's make it a little less prominent, maybe. Just really, really blend it in there. Okay, now the last thing that we sort of want to do is add a little bit of texture, nothing crazy to the gold work up here. So amulet gold top, amulet gold top shade. Didn't think I would get this far into shading on this, honestly, so I'm kind of enjoying getting to muddle with this a little bit. Of course, I can't muddle with it too much or it will get proper muddled. And it would help if I had this in remotely the correct color for it. So we will color pick, we will grab the gold, the gold, there we go. And we'll make it much lighter, because again, this is just like the saran wrap we're adding, so we don't want to add too much or it makes it real dark real fast. And we'll probably sharpen all of these a little bit. I'm just trying to sort of lay them out first. Let's see if we can't represent this well enough. I'm not sure how much of that one's even going to be visible in the final thing, to be truthful. And of course we can get like a little bit on here too. Add just a hair of depth to it. All this needs to be even less so on the far side. Won't have as good visibility on it. Trying to get just like a little hint around the edges. Although if I'm inconsistent with it, it makes it look like the actual gold itself has like lots of weird ridges and bumps and stuff, and I kind of want this to look like a well-made amulet. There we go, that's a little better. There we go, now it looks more like an intentional ridge. If we can't get that going over here too. Okay. Oh, we can get some interesting stuff with this one. We can basically imply the whole diamond shape to it just with that. It's easy enough. Fills that in. Oh, that's the lower section. So if I want to shade that, I need to go to the amulet gold. You know, maybe we don't bother with shading that section. The detail needs to be up here, really, and we're down to about 15 minutes, so... Because I cannot stay terribly long and, like, wrap this one up like I've done with some in the past. Oh, and this one's... Wow, that's just going straight up the wrong place, ain't it? Let's see. If they're getting far away, they ought to be a little smaller. And I want to make sure that we're getting, like, a little bit of a taper even on these. I'm not sure how well this part is actually turning out. I'm sort of going off the original refs, but it's like a much more distant image of this sort of pendant. So the level of detail in these particular pieces is not very high. Maybe what we do, instead of quite this much, because if we just want like a little bit of accent stuff on here to really help show the curvature, and that might be better done like this. Let's see, instead of just drawing the whole lines, let's just draw a few places where the shadows catch. We'll have a little bit there. We'll have, I want it to actually sort of fit into this piece here. Not that last little bit. And we'll only even see this one for just a little bit before it actually vanishes behind this sort of ridge here. And they'll do kind of a similar deal on this one. And we'll have just the faintest hint of it over here. And then once again, for these I'm definitely going to taper them. This one also needs to taper, but not as harshly. This one, though, definitely just imply the shape a little bit without overcommitting to it. That's fine, that's fine. You can sort of have that just to confirm that it connects. But even it's going to sort of taper off pretty quick after that. And we can add just like the tiniest bit more around some of these pieces. That probably shouldn't curve in quite so much as that. There we go. It's fun to get caught up in the shading because it really adds so much depth and character to some of these, but it's not the important detail here. Like a little bit on that one. Just very faint hints of it on this one. Okay. There we go. Oop, last one. Okay. I think that's given the amulet itself a little bit more charm. It's a charm with charm. Maybe I could even like just do one sort of like this. No, because it brings into question why all of that wouldn't be. Okay, yeah, we'll just let the imagination sort of fill that in. Because zooming out, it's plausible enough. The one area I feel there kind of should be a little shadow is here. Around those. We'll just trim that one off a little bit, and maybe even this one too. Nope, not trim the whole darn drawing off if you would. Just that little bit. Same for this one. And this is a level of detail that is officially not going to make that much of a difference in the final piece. Okay. So assuming we take the text and any sketches out, this is looking fairly ominous, but I think we can do better. So let's grab these two layers. Let's get a Mondo select. I mean like a Mondo select. Oops, not quite that much of a Mondo. There we go. And let's just sort of make this worse. Get him really up in there. I guess we had to put it behind all the amulet stuff. How much are we missing when we do this? Oh, there is actually a fair bit of detail that's sort of worth keeping. I don't want to lose my rule of thirdsiness. I know we talked about that a bit at the beginning of the stream. So maybe I want this eye to be sort of at the focal point. Okay. Yes, but let's go ahead and get these two. Whoop. And let's move them to the bottom of all of these layers. That way it's behind. And maybe we should still be able to transform. Oh, wow, did it really just chop everything off beyond that? Okay, jeepers. Was wondering why it wanted that warning before apply transformation. Or maybe that's all there was to it. Well, either way. We'll go ahead and move these down. We'll move these down first, and then that way we have all the apply transformation redos and undos that we could want. So we could really even make this fairly ominous. Of course, the issue being that with the hand kind of blends into it and they run together. So, okay, yeah, let's apply this as a test. And let's see if we can't sort of just darken both of them. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to try something I've never tried before. So this will be a learning opportunity. And we're all going to find out together if it's a terrible idea or not. This will be our figure folder. Woohoo! Okay, and then let's see if we can apply a shade. Oops, this should be there, yes. Can we apply a multiply to an entire folder? Let's find out. Multiply. Clip to folder below you, I guess. Figure shade. And then I'm just gonna go grab the whole darn thing. And we're gonna add just a bit of shade to it until I think it looks good. So we'll grab this. We'll start out lighter. We'll fill. Oops, yeah. Fill on the multiply layer. Maybe we go even darker. Maybe we go even darker. That looks like it's a completely different person's hand it's staring at, though. Hmm. Perhaps they are ever so slightly too close. Maybe if we... Oh, rats. Maybe if we undo the transform just a tad. Let me redo some of this, mind. Control Z. Man, it's bad when you get weird things with the undo redo queue. I gotta keep a closer eye on that. Okay. So, now, let's go ahead and redo this real quick because that super did work, which is actually cool. Figure folder. Dump these in it. And then we can just go above this. Add this. Figure shader. Clip it below with multiply. And then we can do our Mondo select. Go ahead and select everything, really. No reason not to. On the shader layer. Oh, I'm shading it with transparent again. I need to figure out what I'm doing to trigger that. Maybe the issue is I don't want a red shade. Maybe we want like a different sort of... No, okay, so the shader's adding a little too much. With multiply, it really does add actual tone. Okay. I assume this is going to be far too ominous. Well, I mean, it's fitting. Let's try it. You know? That's what this is all about. It's a lot of just trial and error. Okay. I've got the shader selected. That's not helpful. Okay. Figure folder. Grab this. Transform everything in the figure folder, which should just be the face. Maybe we can lose some of the nightmare chin after all. And sort of get the eye going in here. We still capture some of the hair details, which are fun. And it's kind of looming. It's still pointy chin. Okay, I'm thinking this is sufficiently ominous. I'm thinking the amulet could have more detail, but we've got 7 minutes, and I don't want to spend too much time on it other than thought. What if... This is not a good idea, but I'm going to try it. Amulet... Oh, that's the highlight. Wow, that really is. Okay. Gem top shade. There we go. What if I were to grab a second shade layer, just a real faint one, softer than the previous, and just do a big old... Okay, not a 2000 select, mind, but maybe we come in with the 100, and we just kind of capture an entire sort of edge in it like that. Ah, much too dark. It's eating out the other colors still. Or rather, it's just filling over them because I'm filling selection. Ah, rats. Don't know that I can add another multiply layer to this. I can try. If I do... If I put it here, I make it multiply. It's clipped as well. Okay, interesting. Amulet gold top shade 2. A lot of experimenting on this stream. I wasn't expecting any experimenting on this stream. We're doing a little bit of experimenting on this stream. Okay, so that's still applying to the right layer. And that's not quite right. Nope, nope, there we go. Interesting that we've got a little missed bit there. Let's take that out of the gold base, shall we? What? Oh, I filled it with white, darn it. No. There we go. Okay, that actually does some interesting things. Maybe we wanted some of that in there. Okay, I'll do a quick patch on that. I gotta grab the right color. Fill that in. Okay, cool, and the shadow already applies to it. Awesome. We can even do just the tiniest bit more of that. Smooth this curve out a tad. Awesome. Okay. So now I just need to make sure that I apply a similar shadow to the bottom part of the gold here. And that will... Is that working? I may tweak this tiny bit in the 4 minutes we have left. I'm getting a little crazy with my shade layers here, but you can basically see I'm just doing the same thing each time. Amulet, gold, base, shade. I'm getting the hang of this technique because I'm doing it constantly. I need to figure out if I can make some good use of these other ones. Multiply, clip to bottom layer, that's what this button does. So that clips it to this layer right here. So that's what it's applying to. And then if I just add the same... Oh, right. Okay, 1 second. Top shade 2, I'm going to color select, but this is color selecting the shadow, not the actual gold, which is why we're getting kind of this pale color. Because that's what I actually want. I need to match the shadow for the gold base shade when I apply it over this whole section here. And boom, now that all falls into the same shadow. Maybe we need like a little bit of it not in the shadow. And it's looking a little weird, but it kind of works. It'll do. It'll do. And then I'm going to sort of round this out a little bit here. Just kind of scoot it out. Assuming I'm on the correct layer. Zip some of that out. And we'll clear some of that. Well, that adds some depth because of the weird warbles that I've accidentally made, but it's not really the depth I'm looking for. I do think this little bit's good, at least. Maybe we do it like this. Oh, and then the bottom shade. Nope, Amulet Gold Base Shade. We can continue this shadow, and it'll have this sort of cutoff. Okay, that kind of works. And if I do this in the top shade and clear this part out, then it really does sort of end up with like actually looking like layers. Base shade. I know I'm just like tweaking random details at this point, and that's not necessarily helpful or useful. I think this is basically set. I think we're basically good to go on it. Amulet looks intriguing, to say the least. I think that the hand actually turned out surprisingly hand-like. It certainly got its abstraction to it, but it works. Face is horribly ominous, as it rightly should be. And we'll go figure out... Let me actually pull up the... Darn, where the heck did I put it? Yeah, here we go. So on the Widdershins site, we can see they've got... Okay, so here's the actual comic. Great comic. This is actually ad for another comic that I've read. It's pretty fun. A little bizarre right now, but not bad. I don't know what this is an ad for. I wouldn't click on it. I don't trust any ad that I don't immediately already know what it's for. But yeah, so here's the announcement. Let's see where we can post this. I guess on Twitter, that'd not be a bad place for it. Let's see. Guidelines there. Or on Tumblr. Okay. Okay, yes, and we won't dig into comments lest we sort of accidentally steer straight into spoiler territory. After all this time, I'm trying not to tell you too much. But yeah, so day 4, August 4th, is Possession. So yeah, I'll make sure that we get this up on the SiphStreams Twitter. We'll make sure that we use the right hashtag. And this should be fun. Okay, with that, I'm surprisingly happy with how this turned out for a little 2-hour doodle. Obviously, it's, you know, it's a little more ominous than my usual fare, but it fits the characters. It was an interesting prompt, and we got to learn some new techniques. Even if we also just really practice some old techniques with those shader layers. So yeah, we may work with this a little more in the future. Not this piece particularly, but like this style, this lineless style is sort of getting a little better each time. Or at least weirder each time, which, yeah, isn't bad either. So, with that, I think that we're about to wrap it up for today. It has been a blast having y'all here. Obviously, happy to have y'all in chat, happy to have people lurk. We've added a lurk command if anyone wants to use it, but you don't have to. You know, lurk commands kind of confuse me unless you were already talking, because otherwise, like, I don't know, why would you unlurk in order to lurk? So yeah, feel free to just hang around and enjoy, but unfortunately, probably can't hang around and enjoy here too much longer because we're going to be wrapping up. There's a million good streams out there. I'm still looking for good options to raid. I know we did the one Honey Goblin raid the other day. There's a million options, though. Probably more than that. There's so many Twitch streamers these days. It's awesome. It's awesome to have the variety. So if anyone has a suggestion of who I should raid, I'm open to it for future ones. But for now, I think we'll just wrap it up for the night. It has been a blast. I will see y'all next time.